Hi guys, today I will be talking about no code programming. When I talk about no code programming, it doesn't mean you will not program, but my focus for this session would be really to give you an understanding of the concepts. I really want to focus on concepts. The reason being that for most of the tutorials I've seen online, they focus on actually teaching you how to program, but they don't focus on like how to leverage the language in order to solve a business problem. So that's why I have to take you back so that you understand basic concepts in programming languages. So you can use what I'm going to teach. You can apply it in Python, you can apply it in Arrow programming. So any of this programming will do the job. And also in other programming languages, yeah, but these two languages, probably they are one of the, let's say, when it comes to data analysis, it is highly used. So most of my examples that I'm going to be talking about will probably be Python, but you can apply the same thing in Arrow programming. So for this session, I'm just going to focus on the basic, which is variables, expression, and operators. And hopefully, the next sessions, I will build up on that so that you can learn the other advanced concepts. Now, I really need you to refresh your secondary school knowledge for mathematics. I know most of you that are non-tech, you doing like the mathematics, but this session is not me. It's not like a mathematics session, but I just want you to know that, the reason, one of the reasons why you were studying mathematics is, when it comes to these programming languages, mathematics also helps you to improve on your logical thinking, because for programming as well, whenever you have a problem to solve, it's not only about just writing the code, but you need to also think about the logic. The most difficult part is even the logic, because when you understand the logic, you can actually tell someone to implement. So for now, let's focus on the basics. So your secondary school mathematics, you all heard of, most of the time people usually ask, why is it that we are always searching for x and y? Now is the time that you understand why we were doing x and y back in secondary school. um if you remember well, x and y's were all variables, right? And every time, maybe today the variable x will be 2, the next time you come, based on the problem, x will be 5, the next time x can be 200, same thing for y, and so on and so forth. So realize what happens here. These values keep changing. That is why it's called a variable. A variable means the value of the variable keeps changing depending on the problem. Now, in programming languages, you can use any, like you can, label your variables the way you want, but you need to give them very good names. Reason being that you're programming something in a business context, and you want people to, whenever they see your code, they should understand that the reason why I labeled something as X or Y or something else, it means this in the business vocabulary. So normally, when it comes to variables, you need to really give very good names. But before we go into giving names of variables, I would like to say that when you say x is equals to 2, let me give a good variable. Let's say I'm interested in in writing a code that stores the age of students. So I'm looking at student age. So I can give the name of my variable as student age, or it can just be age or whatever. So depending on, there are standard ways of labeling, of giving names for your variables. So it doesn't really matter which one. Let's say I go in for this. Now, at a particular point, let's say I'm studying the age of a kid that is growing. So maybe the first year. Normally, if you're reading this, you say age is equals to 2. That's what you normally read in mathematics, right? But in programming language, this is not what it means. It means the variable age has been assigned the value 2 at this moment. So this symbol or the operator you see is not an equals to, it is an assignment statement. These are basic things you need to understand. So this is an assignment statement. Assignment statement means the variable age has been assigned the value 2, which means that it can change at any time. When you assign something, it assumes a value at that time. I can go to the next line of my Python code and I say age is equals to 5. In that case, it's not really equals to, it means I've assigned the value 5 to my variable h. Then automatically, if I ask for the value of my variable h, is going to give me 5 and not 2. So whenever you do this, the value replaces the original value. So that is the meaning of assignment statement. In Python, the nice thing about Python is when you assign something, a value to it, it assumes the type of value. So when I talk about type, so indirectly I'm talking about data types. So that will lead me to the next thing. So talk about data types. Basically, there are two major data types. It's either something is a number, or it's a string, or a text. And the numbers can be divided. You can break it down to, it can be an integer. It can be a float number, it can be a decimal number. Yeah, it can be a decimal number. There are other types of numbers, so but these are the basic ones you can understand, but there are so many other types. So normally, when I assign for h, I assign the value to 2, right? So normally 2 is an integer. So if I do the data type of that variable h, it will give me, it will say it's an integer. It will actually specify that it's an integer, but we know that it's a number. So in Python, in any programming language, at any time you can determine the data type of a variable. It is important to know the data type of a variable, because there are certain operations you want to do, and you need to understand the data type of the variable before you do certain operations. So in this case, when I assign the value, for example, 5 to h, automatically this variable h assumes the data type integer. So if I need to know the data type of this variable, I can use what is called built-in functions. Now, what are built-in functions? When you install these languages, maybe Arrow or Python, they already come with some pre-built functions. The thing is that they understand that there are certain things you need to already do beforehand, or these are the common tasks that people want to do when they are doing programming, when they are programming something. So when you install the program Python, for example, it already comes with some built-in functions. But depending on your business case, there are functions that you need to write on your own, and that is maybe, I don't know when, but definitely we'll come to that chapter where I'll be talking about writing your own functions. But for now, let's focus on the built-in functions. And I'm just going to use Python as my main language here. I don't know the function in Arrow, but the built-in function in Python to determine the data type of a variable is z-type. So if I put z-type and I put h, okay, and I execute this line of code, it's going to tell me that the data type of h is an integer. It's going to tell me it's an integer. So depending on what I've assigned, so it doesn't mean that since h is an integer, I cannot assign something else to h. I can say h now is equals to 6.5. If I execute this same line of code, it will change from an integer to a float. So depending on what has been assigned to h, if I run my code to determine the data type, it will automatically change with respect to what you have assigned. So this is one type of built-in function. So there are so many types of built-in functions, but my goal here is not for you to memorize the built-in functions. If you need to do something, while you're studying, while you're going through the tutorials, I'm going to provide you the tutorials, something that you can actually really practice or really execute at the end of this session. Another built-in function that is so common is a print statement. So when you print, if I say print h, what it will happen is it will just print out the value of h. So in this case, if now that I've already executed this line, so my h is equal to 6.5, if I print out h, it will tell me that the value of h is 6.5. So you see the difference. This function, z-type, expects a variable, so you put in your parameter, and the output tells you the data type. This function, print, expects an input and prints out the value. So depending on the built-in function, it expects something and it prints out something else. Another type of another useful built-in function is when you want to convert from one data type to another. Take note, we are still working with numbers. If you remember, my age now is 6.5. If I ask for the data type, it's going to give me a float. But what if I only want to work with integers? I can use a built-in function and I put in age. When I do this, it will just give me 6. Okay, it will convert to an integer. So you know integers don't have decimal places. But you need to be careful. When I just do this, it's going to give me 6. But I haven't requested this to be stored somewhere. So for some reason, if I need to make sure that whatever values I give for age, it should be converted to an integer, then I need to assign, so let's say I call it age integer, which means I can say integer function age, which means that anytime you bring in a value, if you put in 6.5, if I say age is equal to 6.5, when I execute this, it will take this 6.5, bring it in this function, and if you remember, this is an integer function, it's a conversion function. It will convert it to 6 and store the value in age integer. So if I print out age integer, it's going to give me 6. So those are the kind of things you need to know, and you just need to understand that what I'm focusing on is mostly like the assignment statements. So each time you do something, you must assign it. If you don't store the value, assign means you're actually storing the value. You making sure that it is somewhere. If you just maybe do something like this without assigning it, yes, it will print it out, but it will not be saved somewhere. That is why you need to do stuff like this. So if you're interested in keeping the value, then you must assign your answer to a variable. The other type of data type is a string, and a string, the difference is for a string the values are always in double quotes or single quotes. Let's say I want to keep the gender, so the gender. If I say the gender, I will say it's female. So when I say it's female, you clearly see that the value, I'm putting a value, but I make sure it's in double quotes. In Python, it can either be double quotes or single quotes. So anything you see in double quotes or single quotes is a string or a text. That's very, very important. Even if I put gender is equals to 5 like this is a string. This is not a number. The fact that I've already enclosed this thing in a double quote or a single quote, automatically, if I ask for the Z type of gender, it will tell me that it's a string, even though you clearly see that it's a number. But the fact that I've done it in double quotes, it will give me a string. So there are so many functions or methods when it comes to string, right? So for strings, you can either some built-in functions you can have for to really manipulate strings. You can say upper, so you can ask for upper. If I put upper gender, take note, variables, the fact that I put upper gender, this is a variable. It not means it means it will go and search for the current value of gender and do the uppercase of that. So the fact that I've given gender is 5, technically it will not do anything because there's no uppercase for 5. But if the original value was the female, then when I do upper gender, then I should expect the output like this. Female. Okay? And just doing this, remember well, just doing this will not assign the value to any variable. If I'm interested in storing this value somewhere, then I need to maybe put gender, for example, gender2 is equals to upper gender, and upper here is a function, then I put gender. So these are basic things you need to know when it comes to building functions. So somehow I've already covered basic things that you need to know. Data type, so a variable is just something that holds a value at a particular moment, and there are two types of data. The variable the value of the variable could either be a number which is subdivided into integers, floats, and decimals, or it can be a string. A string can be one word or two words, or it can be a whole sentence. So I can say the string is student info. Student info is equals to, when I do this, I can say hi. Hi, my name is Ivo, and I put that. So this one has definitely the code starts and ends here. This is still a string, and I can manipulate this string the way I want. So there are times that you want to extract this just hi, or you want to print it out. There are so many building functions. My goal here is not to execute all the building functions you can have in Python, but the course note that I'm going to provide you with will definitely show you how to do all of these things, and also leverage the other built-in functions that you need to know. So, those are stuff that we did back in secondary school, but that is still not the end, right? Because we now have to deal with expressions. So when I talk about expressions, I mean, if you remember back in the secondary school days, you say x plus y is equals to 2, or z is equals to x plus y. These are expressions. An expression is made up of what? Operators. So this is an operator. Even though back in secondary school we say this is an equal to sign, I've actually just mentioned that this is what an assignment statement in programming language, in Python to be more specific. So let's assume this. Let's say we want to execute this in Python. So if I say my value of x is 2 and my value of y is 5, then when I do z is equals to x plus 5, what the code is actually doing is it will take the value of x, which is 2, plus the value of y, which is 5, do the summation and assign the value to z. If I just do x plus y, yes, it will print out 7, but this answer, if you remember well, will not be stored anywhere. The reason why I'm doing this assignment statement is because I want to store the result somewhere. So definitely I can also do a lot. So there are many types of operators. If you remember, let's just take board mass for example. This is brackets of division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So I can still do other things. Let's say I'm interested to, let's say I have a variable called date of birth, and I'll request someone to give me the date of birth. Let's say your date of birth is 1st of January 2000. Okay, I'm interested in calculating the age. So for me to calculate your age, you need to understand that I need to take the current date, right? So I take the current date of today. This is what you need to know. So I'm defining technically this is a simple function, but it's an expression. The current date minus the date of birth. So we know the current date, there's a function in Python where if I ask for the current date, it will always give me the date of today. So if I need to calculate your age, I can ask someone, what is your date of birth? If you give me your date of birth, I assign it to the variable date of birth. And if I take the current date of today, which I believe is the 27. So if I take 27 or 5th of 2000, you will now do this minus your date of birth. So the date of birth here is this 2000. No, wait, this 2024, this 2000. I'm not going to be exact, but we know that this should give you your 24 years old, right? It can give you 24.5, for example, and I'm not interested to know the month. Now, if I want to get the exact age in integer, by now you should understand, you should get the rhythm, or the function. I can put integer of 24.5. Alternatively, we can do age. Normally we can do age integer. This is the right code, okay? So current date, which is also a function, minus date of birth. So what happens is, now if you remember your board mass, it will first of all execute what is in the bracket. So you will take the date of today minus the date of birth, which is one will give me 24.5. Then now this function outside will convert this 24.5. I don't know, it's going to do a round down or maybe to the ceiling, which is just say the response is going to be 24. So that is how you normally can use, actually do an expression. Basically, this is what you'll be doing. Let's say, for example, you were doing data analysis for a student information database. Then these are kind of things you always do, because normally students, when they come to school, they don't give you the ages. What they give you is the date of birth, and at every time you want to get the age, then you need to write a function like this. It's not even a function. This is a simple expression where I'm using a variable. I'm doing a calculation, which is an expression. Then I'm assigning the answer to this variable. So basically, I think we have covered quite a lot already. Let me just make sure that I have touched most of the things. So I think we have really covered a lot about variables. Again, expressions. Expressions are quite simple, depending on what your business case is all about, just using variables and operators. Like I mentioned, there are so many types of operators. You should be able to talk about multiplication, division, the square root. These are all operators, okay? And there are so many of them, and they are already built-in functions for these things to happen. Maximum, minimum. If, for example, you want to know the maximum of a list of numbers, we're going to talk about lists maybe next class. So if I put 10, 25, 15, 70, if I do this is an inbuilt function in Python, and I just do max, obviously it's going to return me 70. Same, you have the minimum value as well. So what you need to understand is that most of these functions, they'll definitely have like the doc string, like the helper, where you can actually see how you're supposed to pass in your parameters. Remember, these things are called parameters. So when you start defining your own functions, you write them in parameters. Same thing, the way they have defined these functions, they have their way of using it. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to a very good tutorials that most of the time I used when I used to offer Python training. I don't know this guy, but I found his tutorial on GitHub very, very useful. So I'm going to obviously give you the link in the video description. But just to make it to understand, it's a 30 days of Python. And today you see we have covered. So basically there's also instruction that guess how to install Python, what are the things you need to know already. I believe these things are very easy for you to follow them up. Even if you don't like this tutorial, you can obviously get other YouTube tutorials. But today we have seen variables and building functions. We have seen operators. Let's just go into the variable section and the building functions, and you see the course notes. So you see these are building functions, so many of them. I think today, what have we seen? We have seen the print in function, right? I just recently mentioned the max. What else did I mention today? The minimum as well. So you see the minimum function is there. I didn't mention the sum, but these are things that you can obviously, I believe if you click on them or you Google them, they'll tell you what these things are capable of doing. So these are building functions that you don't need to memorize everything. You just, when you need them, just recall that I need to get the maximum or the absolute value, and then I look for the function, I get that. So this is variables. You see, let us see valid variable names. This is how you do variable names. Most of the time they use small case letters. Yeah. Invalid, you see these are invalid ones. So you need to really take into consideration all of this when you're actually defining your variables. Other things that is talked about, how to declaring variables. Like I mentioned, in Python, you don't really declare a variable. As soon as you just assign something to a variable, it obviously becomes picks up that number. And maybe this is a very good example. I didn't really mention this, but you can assign. So if you look at this example, I know you cannot see my pointer right now, but if you look at they're declaring multiple variables in a line. So you see, I can declare multiple variables in line in the sense that to the left of this equals to sign, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are five variables. So first name, last name, country, age, is married. So in this case, you clearly see that it's equals to, you see these are strings, right? Asabane, whatsoever, Hensky. So you are supposed to have 5 values to the right as well. Since there are 5 variables to the left, you are supposed to have 5 values to the right. Those are things I believe when you read them, you understand. Data types, I told you about strings. You see integers, float, boolean. I didn't mention boolean. Boolean are just true or false. So if I say it's 2 equals to 2, you will tell me it's a boolean or not. And the nice thing about this tutorial is their exercises. One thing you need to do is, when it comes to programming in any language, you need to get your hands dirty. If you like, you go and watch the whole YouTube, and if you don't practice those things, you're just wasting your time, because the next minute you forget. So I'm just really encouraging you to, when you read this, you make sure you try the exercise. If you have an issue with the exercises, don't hesitate to drop a message in the comment section and ask your questions. Some of you, you're having the opportunity to ask questions, you're always shy of asking questions. The more you ask questions, the more you ask the dumb questions, the more you're going to learn. So don't be shy, make sure you ask your questions. So that's one nice thing about this. So I'm going to challenge you to look at the first 3 topics. So the first 3, introduction, variables, and I think the first 4 up to strings, right? The first 4 days. The next lessons, or when next I'm motivated, we can look at lists, tuples, and sets. Those are other ways of storing data. Okay, maybe one last thing I would just want to mention, you might not see this in the course notes, is I've been talking about that this is not equals to, this is an assignment statement. So what is equals to now in Python? So equals to, if I say 2 is, if I need to ask, is 2 equals to 2? This is now equals to, is double. So is 2 equals to 2? Then Python is going to respond that is true. So, or if I say is 3 equals to 2, it's going to tell me that is false. This is a special type of data type called Boolean. Boolean is either true or false. So this is your equals to sign. If you need to check if something is equals to something, then you're supposed to use double equals to sign. This is very important when we come to the if statements, because in the if statements, you need to check conditions. So if something is equal to something, then this is where you utilize your equals to sign. Okay, I know my course, I've just been everywhere, but I hope it was clear enough. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. But I challenge you to do the first 4 topics, and I really encourage you to install the Python, do everything, and try this out. And if there are any questions, make sure you put in your chat section. See you.